Creed is one of my absolute favorite movies ever. It was one of my favorite cinema experiences when I saw it for the first time. It's a film I've rewatched more than a dozen times since then. It's fun, it's inspired me, it's exciting, it's emotional, and it's a fantastic standalone film. What I mean by that is, nowadays, I'm a big fan of the sport of boxing and the Rocky films, but when I first saw this, I didn't watch boxing, and I'd only seen Rocky 1, and this was still fantastic. This is a film anyone can watch and enjoy. I have so many thoughts on this movie that I likely will make mini videos on it, but today, I want to talk about one part of the film in particular. The finale. That big final boxing match. I believe this is a perfect finale, from a technical perspective, from an emotional perspective, from every perspective. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Obviously, spoiler alert for the film, let's get into it. The intensity of this finale, and the state of mind of the protagonist, is brilliantly set up by the one take of Donnie walking to the ring, something that the film had used multiple times previously to build tension. This single shot leads from Rocky's speech to the work on the pads to the ring walk, with no score, with realistic sound effects, with the camera circling around him in the changing room and then following him into the ring. This helps to instill that sense of anticipation and nerves in the audience. If you've ever competed in a sporting event, or had any kind of performance, you know those butterflies that show up in your stomach when it's time to go. And instead of a big, grand cinematic entrance, this film opts for realism and puts you in that uncomfortable space of walking to the ring with Donnie, thus making you connect more with him and connect more with what that scene is trying to create. Tension leading up to the big finale. From a story and character perspective, the walkouts also help to establish this scene so well. There really is no glamour to Creeds. The music is heard from the speakers in the movie, rather than in a more non-diegetic grand way. In fact, at one point, the crowd's cheering for his opponent drowns out his own music. Initially, everyone is booing him, and this entrance, particularly contrasted with Conlan's, helps to establish this underdog character arc for Creed, and how this is the culmination of him having to prove himself against all odds, and again makes you root for the character more. Like Rocky says, the people in that crowd don't know what him and Donnie have been through, but we as the audience do. We've seen the hardship leading to this moment, so we want so badly for Creed to show all these people that, and prove them wrong. And on Conlan's entrance, it's the exact opposite. It's flashy, it's over the top, it's from the perspective of viewers who would be watching this in this movie's world, and it's incredibly cinematic. It gets you in Donnie's mindset of feeling out of your element. Donnie's walkout was so understated by comparison, whereas Conlan has done this many times before, and has such confidence in this part of the event. It also visually continues what's been set up about this villain. Much like Apollo Creed in Rocky 1, he's more here to put on a show. He thinks this will be a walk in the park, and doesn't take the protagonist seriously. I'm not saying he's the most developed character in the world, but for this film, with his lack of respect for his opponent's ability that is eventually changed, and his trash talk that makes you want Donnie to succeed even more and prove himself, he works really well as the antagonist and the final obstacle for Donnie to conquer. And Tony Bellew actually does a pretty good job acting in this. Also, in general, it's just a cool villain entrance, and that's part of what makes boxing such a perfect sport for films, and combat sports in general, I guess. They're so cinematic, from the sport itself to these over-the-top walkouts. This kind of walkout is definitely something you could see a boxer doing in real life. And this, combined with the film bringing back the boxer stats on screen, which hadn't been seen since much earlier in the film, is very effective, as you can now compare the credentials and see how much the challenges have stepped up throughout the film. The stats also help to ground this in this movie's boxing world, and can help you relate this to real-life boxing if you're a fan of that. Like what kind of fight this would be, or who this champion would be if this was in our world. The real-world boxing detail this film brings also adds to this film's sense of realism that's been building throughout, and helps to add to that sense of tension. We have points of reference in this scene for the real world, and so there's more of a sense of pressure on Donnie, as this feels like a real-world championship boxing match. Michael Buffer announcing the fighters, having the boxing proceedings, shots put in there that could be part of an actual boxing broadcast, and the commentators all help to add an extra sense of realism to this fight. And on the commentary, again, it's a part of the sport of boxing that works so well cinematically. I like the way True Geordie put boxing commentary, and it applies very well to this film.
Being a commentator is providing the soundtrack to the epic things people are saying on camera.
While boxing commentary, of course, tells you what's happening in the ring, it's also often descriptive and emotional, and adds to the excitement of the experience.
Wilder's right hand is Thor's hammer, and here in round 1, he is Ragnarocking Stavern!
And in that way, it works very well here. I can understand why it would seem somewhat on the nose to some people at times, like when the commentary is saying the themes of the film or stating thoughts in the characters' heads, but I think that it's quite a clever way to convey some of that information during the fight that you might not be able to convey as well otherwise. And it adds to the excitement, and is still actually realistic, if you listen to other boxing commentary. Technically speaking, this fight also looks realistic, just in terms of green screen in the ring and the crowd and how it's shot. Unlike Creed 2, where there are a few moments where the visual effects might take you out of it a bit, here, there's never a moment where this doesn't feel real. The boxing itself also feels realistic. Obviously, it's a little more precise and exciting than most real boxing fights, because it is a movie, but it's realistic enough for this film. The punches look real, the sound effects make their power more apparent. The cuts and the zooms and the pans help to add to a building of intensity and the pace of the fight throughout. The swollen eye that Creed gets looks realistic. Technically speaking, it's masterfully done. Now, I've talked a lot about the technical aspects of this finale, but emotionally speaking, it's also perfectly set up in the film. All the characters are in the perfect place and state of mind for this finale to be emotionally resonant and satisfying from a story perspective. Bianca forgiving Donnie and coming to support him, Marianne coming around and supporting Donnie even though she doesn't love his fighting, but accepting that it's what he loves to do and what he has to do to become his own man and be at peace with himself. Rocky having fought his own fight and now ready to follow Donnie into battle, and Donnie's own arc have all been building to this moment. The note and the shorts do a good job of summing up the end of Donnie's arc, realizing that yes, he is Apollo Creed's son, but he's also his own man. The shorts say Creed and Johnson on them. He's wearing his father's iconic shorts, not because he's just a copy of him, but to pay tribute to his father while building his own legacy. And hey, that arc is kind of meta-commentary on the film itself, taking on the iconic and beloved Rocky franchise and characters and story while still being its own thing. Rocky's speech before the fight is also absolutely brilliant.
And you're doing it for yourself, not for me, not your father's memory, but for you. And I can see in your eyes, you're gonna do it.
Rocky has so many great motivational quotes in this film, and this one, with the camera spinning slowly and methodically around them before following them in, it helps make the scene not just about the nerves that Donnie is feeling and the tension before the fight, but makes it a scene that also gets you excited and motivated, to make you believe that Donnie can do this. Yes, this is a huge challenge, this is an uncomfortable situation for him, he does have those internal emotional problems he's been dealing with, and that's why he's going to succeed here, to overcome that and succeed for himself and his own legacy. And speaking of Rocky's motivational abilities, my favorite line in this film, and something I quote way too often in my real life, one step, one punch, one round at a time.
One step at a time, one punch at a time, one round at a time, one step at a time, one punch at a time, one round at a time. Get it right.
Coming back in this final fight gives me chills every time.
One step, one punch, one round at a time. There you go. One step, one punch, one round at a time.
A big part of the Rocky movies is characters' internal struggles being represented physically and visually through boxing. Like, when the protagonist is in the correct mindset and a good emotional state, that's when they succeed. And when they're arrogant or distracted, they fail. And it's all about getting knocked down by life and getting back up, which is illustrated in the fights. Granted, some of these movies take those types of themes more seriously than others. So I think that line of one step, one punch, one round at a time is fantastic life advice and boxing advice. Sometimes life can be extremely overwhelming and you don't know where to start, or you're worried about a million things in the future, or you have a ton of assignments or challenges of some kind, and you're trying to take them on all at once and become extremely stressed and exhausted and fail because of it. Taking it one step at a time, one punch at a time, one round at a time, breaking it down and focusing is a great idea. And in boxing as well, focusing on winning each moment instead of thinking about the whole fight builds up your victory and your opportunities throughout the fight. The fight is also very satisfying in the underdog sense. Creed is, quite frankly, getting his ass kicked for the first round. You can see his nervous energy as well when he gets knocked down and he's trying to convince the ref that he's fine.
3, 4, good, 5, good.
In the corner, visually, Creed's struggle in the early parts of this fight are shown. The camera is handheld and moving throughout all of Creed's time in the corner, showing he's still got the nerves, he's still not comfortable. Meanwhile, Conlan's shots are steady. In the corner, the blood and spitting isn't necessarily pretty and glamorous, but it adds to the realism. And there's also this line from Rocky that always makes me laugh.
You keep making mistakes like that, we're gonna pick you up with a vacuum cleaner, okay?
I also enjoy the more realistic boxing, and the intensity of it is also felt whenever the camera gets closer to the action, and you can really hear and see the shots clearly. The sound design especially really makes you feel the power behind the shots. Another great thing this finale does is continuing to have nuance with the characters. Namely, Creed's character isn't just completely changed out of nowhere. Towards the start of the fight, he's a bit arrogant, cocky, angry. He's still saying, "Come on," because that's part of his character. He is cocky, he is aggressive, and it's okay that that's a part of him, as long as he doesn't let it take over and consume him, and thus, in this situation, get in the way of his focus in his fighting. So yeah, I like that he doesn't just completely change. Those traits, realistically, are still a part of him, and he can even use them to his advantage. In fact, it leads to his first big punch of the fight, as he baits Conlan to overcommit and leave himself open.
Legit, right? Huh? Legit?
The build-up to that punch is perfect. Creed is getting beaten, the music cuts, then Conlan misses, block, block, miss, punch. There's almost a rhythm to the build-up to that moment, which is helped by the shot from below, where more clearly you can see the two blocked punches from Conlan. And then the quick cut to Donnie hitting helps to emphasize the power and sharpness of it, and then cutting to a slow-mo close-up of Conlan's surprised face with the blood and the triumphant music kicking in. It signifies a big change in the fight and that Donnie is still in this contest. And it just gets the adrenaline going and is so exciting. The excited reactions from Rocky and Bianca and Donnie's mom, the wild swings and trading beginning with each guy landing, the intensity of the music ramping up, the excited commentary, how the camera dynamically spins around them with all the shots still looking and feeling real. Again, it gets your adrenaline pumping like you're watching a real fight and your fighter just landed a great shot and now it's an all-out war. It does a great job of ramping up your excitement and being exhilarating, especially after Donnie has been losing the whole time and now has a chance. An amazing and extremely well put together moment. And again, Creed's hot-headedness still comes through with his shouting at the end, but it's aggression that's helping him in the fight. He's not letting it ruin his focus. And now Conlon is screaming too, who's been so calm and arrogant up to this point, which ramps the excitement up even more and gets you ready for what is now more of a fight and a war. After that second round, the movement of the camera changes. In Creed's corner, it's now steadier, whereas in Conlon's there's more movement, showing how that moment has changed their mentalities. And there's more great hype-you-up motivation from Rocky.
You belong in here. They don't know what you've been through, and they sure don't know what we've been through.
The camera work is also very impressive, and always achieves what the shot is meant to make you feel. When the camera pulls in from afar, it's pulling you back into this war as the music follows as well, and then there are the faster cuts as the action becomes more montage-esque and fast-paced. The fight starts more like a real-life boxing match to settle you into the stakes and the situation, and then becomes more stylized and cinematic as it goes to increase the excitement even more. It's a great and natural build-up. I also love the moment where it shows Creed's perspective of the match. The room goes dark, there's barely any noise, barely any crowd, it's moving slower, just him and Conlon. That's what Creed sees in his focused state. The sound effects on the misses of the punches also help to establish how powerful they are, as much as the actual hits do. On the boxing realism side, again, yeah, the boxing is exaggerated, but this is a movie after all. It is meant to be entertaining and to tell part of a story. It's not going to be 100% realistic. And to be honest, some boxing fights in real life are just as crazy and exciting as this one, which we'll get back to in a little bit. And on that realism, the commentator's saying,
Creed has proven plenty in this fight. He's taken it, he's given it back, but he does not look like a match for the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world.
Is realistic. While this is a story, and Creed is going to have this heroic, brave, epic performance in the finale, he is still at the beginning of his career, and this guy's the champion. He isn't just going to be smoking him. This is similar to Rocky 1, where Rocky does put up a fantastic fight, but it'd be no fun and too much of a stretch if he just comes in and beats the champ with ease. The struggle of overcoming such a challenge is what makes it so engaging. The quick series of close-ups with the blood and the cutman and the bell build the intensity, handheld shots make you feel like you're in the midst of this battle, active and fired up. Rocky's voice fading in and out shows how Creed's so focused on the fight that he can hear some of the advice, but some of it is just background noise.
Bring back everything that's ever hurt you, all the pain you had inside, everything that held you back. Put it in both fists, and I want you to drive it through his body, and I promise you, his head will fall.
All these stylistic choices take a finale that realistically could have been quite standard. We've seen this kind of underdog story before, and we've seen specifically a very similar one to this in the first Rocky, and even in Rocky Balboa, and makes it extremely engaging, exciting, and fresh. Rocky once again comes in with the best motivation.
It's you against you. That's right. He's just in your way. Get him out of the way.
Love the you versus you moment from earlier coming back. Another Rocky lesson that's great for boxing practice and real life advice. And again, Creed overcoming adversity is so engaging plot-wise and for this specific character. Speaking of adversity, the big knockdown is a pivotal moment in this film and one of its best. Again, it's set up perfectly. The music is rising, indicating that there's about to be a triumphant moment. And given that every time the music has risen or dipped, it's followed whether Creed is doing well or not, you've subconsciously come to really trust that music. So then when it cuts abruptly as he gets hit, it adds so much to the impact of that moment and that punch. And then the single slow-mo shot following him down without music. For a lot of the fight leading up to this point, it's been closer, fast-cut montage action. And so visually and sound-wise, this brings that to such a sharp stop to make you feel the impact and almost the dread of this moment. That feeling that maybe this could be it for Donnie in this fight. Again, you have those butterflies in your stomach. Plus, just the visual of his head turning so dramatically, blood flying out, and his unconscious body dropping onto the canvas is very powerful, and again, makes you feel that sense of dread. Like you feel like your heart just skipped a beat. Now, what follows and the way the film handles this turning point of Donnie picking himself off the canvas is very simple but so effective. Firstly, cutting from one shot back to Creed on the canvas. One shot, back to Creed on the canvas. The same slow-mo shot of him on the canvas, it really emphasizes the seeming finality of what just happened. Like, there's no change. He's not getting up. He's stuck here, just like the camera is stuck on the shot. Conlon is celebrating a knockout, all the people he cares about are telling him to get up, but Donnie can't hear that. Instead, we see what's in his mind and heart that makes him get up. His memories with his mother, with Bianca, with Rocky, and the thought of Apollo and the legacy that he wants to create. Not being in the shadow of his father, but still being proud of having that name. He's not doing it for any of these people, but those are the people that help him, and motivate him, and love him, and make him, him. And his internal conflict about his father that he's finally resolved has also made him, him. He brings back everything, good, bad, everything that's led to this moment to motivate himself to get up off that canvas. The cutting back and forth and no music execution of that moment is fantastic, and it's one of my favorite movie moments ever. And when he actually does get up, that extremely loud sound, almost like a roar, as he comes back, and the drums from the music kicking in again, finally breaking the silence and the slow-mo and bringing you back into the fight, and the commentators talking about it adds even more excitement and emotion to the scene.
Creed just got up like a man possessed. He was out.
And again, an amazing and inspiring message. Creed gets up, keeps fighting on through adversity, and it's perfect for his character arc. He's proving himself, showing that he has the heart of a champion, that he deserves to be here on his own merit. He's shown now that he can hit hard, but also that he can get hit hard and still keep moving forward, in both life and boxing. Also, if you want to say it's too unrealistic that Donnie was brutally knocked down late in the fight and got up, again, it is a movie, it's fiction, it's allowed to have some crazy moments, it's not a documentary. But B, even ignoring that, I implore you to go watch Wilder Fury 1, where Tyson Fury was knocked down in the 12th round by arguably the hardest hitting puncher in boxing history and still got up. Like I mentioned earlier, that's another reason why boxing is so good for films and storytelling. There's a perfect visual way to represent life beating you down and you having to find it within yourself to get back up and keep fighting. It's fantastic for motivating people and inspiring people, and I have to say, this movie inspires me so much every time I watch it, in lots of ways. Might talk more about that kind of thing in a future video. A few small miscellaneous details that I like in this part after the knockdown. Stitch having the confidence in Creed's ability and heart and giving him the numbers to continue is a nice small moment. Rocky's reaction in the corner here also always makes me laugh a bit.
I'm good. You're good? I'm good. All right. Sure about that?
Keeping a bit of subtle and natural levity in this otherwise very tense, exciting, emotional scene. And also again, the practical effects on the eye injury are fantastic. It looks very real and very painful, so good job to the makeup team on that. The whole conversation that Rocky and Donnie have in the corner before that final round is probably the emotional climax of the film. Rocky's debate with himself whether or not to stop the fight, which is very understandable given what happened all those years ago, and then Donnie finally opening up about his own personal struggles more. For quite a bit of the film, Donnie's emotions, especially regarding his father, have come out in the form of impatience and anger and hostility, and so to see a proper, honest release from him with this line,
I gotta prove it. Prove what? I'm not a mistake.
Is so emotionally satisfying, and a bit heartbreaking. Rocky's speech also has some nice references and resolutions to certain things for fans of the Rocky series, but for people just watching this movie on its own, it's also very powerful, with Rocky thanking Donnie for giving him the strength to fight his cancer, and now Donnie needs to find the strength within himself to fight and go knock that
son of a bitch down.
And then the moment that'll make me tear up every time I watch it, no matter what.
I know you are. You know why? Because you're a Creed, and I love you, kid. Go on.
Again, after having watched all the other Rocky movies, now this has more layers to it because of Rocky's relationship with Apollo, but just in this movie alone, after the personal journey these two have been through, the ups and downs of their relationship, with Rocky earlier telling him they're not family, to now saying,
And I love you, kid.
It's me right there every time. And then the classic Rocky theme comes in at this peak of emotion. You keep thinking this movie can't one-up itself with great moments, but it keeps doing it. The Rocky theme comes in at exactly the perfect time. Donnie's going into battle, it comes with the perfect build-up from that speech. All these amazing moments come at the perfect time in this finale. It's never an overload of them where you don't appreciate each of them individually. This finale is so perfectly paced and builds so well emotionally that each moment hits home. And then throughout the final round, that classic Rocky theme is mixed in with the Creed theme, another nice touch of showing the old and the new coming together, how Donnie is going in with Rocky's help and motivation, but is also his own man. Also, nice detail of Conlon properly touching Creed's gloves compared to earlier, shows that Creed has earned his respect throughout the fight. This whole fight is still shot brilliantly. The angles and the cuts and so on, again, make the punches look very real, and it's just a great looking final fight. Also, if I said earlier that was the emotional climax of the film, I might have to take it back, I'm not sure, because when Rocky yells, and the music turns more triumphant, and Donnie puts Conlon in the corner, and the commentators talk about how he's unloading on him,
Throwing body shots like he's Rocky Balboa. Going upstairs like he's Apollo Creed.
it's an absolutely perfect moment. It's a great example, too, of how the commentary elevates the scene. It's realistic commentary, but also complements the film's themes and character's journey so well. And that, mixed with Rocky's and Bianca's and Marianne's reactions, and then he puts the champ on the canvas for the first time in his career, and then that slow-mo chest pound, it's so cool. I'm sorry, the analysis has kind of gone out the window here for a second. I'm really just fanboying and getting excited writing about the scene, but that's what this finale does so well. All of this comes together to make such an exciting, satisfying finale. Conlon getting to his feet is also very tense. I like the drum in the soundtrack in the background, almost mimicking the ref's counting. And in the end, Conlon does get up, and ultimately, he wins. But much like Rocky 1, that's not really the point. This film is a bit of a remake of Rocky 1 in some ways, but it does it in the best way. It brings enough new to the table and is executed so well that it's not a ripoff, it's not derivative, it doesn't feel unoriginal. From its unique and creative style to new takes on characters, like for example, the love interest character Bianca isn't like Adrian at all, it's definitely its own thing. The film does share some themes and a few basic story elements. There's a reason they use that story, by the way. It's a compelling one that works. But it has so many other different interesting character arcs and plot lines, and stylistically does more than enough to be its own amazing film. Anyway, back to Donnie losing. This was about Donnie proving himself. To himself, really. And yeah, he didn't really lose in anyone's eyes. As the commentators say, Conlon won the fight, while Creed won the night. I also love the modern, epic rendition of the classic Rocky victory music.
The bell sounds, so Conlon survives the 12th round.
What a finish!
Then, there's a very heartwarming ending. After all this excitement, there's a great conclusion to it. Again, the commentary comes in with a great line to close this with.
He's no longer just the namesake of Apollo Creed, he's the living embodiment.
His mom being proud of him, Conlon showing him respect, which helps to make him not just a cartoon villain. Trash talk before a fight and respect after is something you see often in fighting. Creed's final speech, where he thanks his mom and thanks Rocky and calls him family, says he's proud to be a Creed with that Creed piano theme in the background.
I know he ain't leave me on purpose. I'm proud to be a Creed.
The journey has culminated beautifully. He's proud of his name, and he's out of the shadow, he's on his way to make his own legacy, but respecting where he came from. It's the perfect conclusion for this arc. And it's clever on the film's part that this kind of telling the audience that the arc is complete works naturally in the film and doesn't feel lazily written or like they're just telling you the message without showing it. Because A, they have shown it throughout the film and this finale, and B, because this kind of interview would happen in the ring after the fight. So using that, they can have this very nice bow on top kind of end to the arc. This movie uses different aspects of boxing, from the commentary to the press conference to the post-fight interview, very well and cleverly to deliver exposition and help tell the story. The crowd that initially booed Creed now cheering him, the music reaches its triumphant end, Donnie puts his hand up. It's the perfect end for this character's underdog story. I love the line that commentators say about this being a fight they'll never forget. That really spoke to me in the audience, because this finale, and more generally, just watching this movie in the cinema for the first time, is an experience that I'll never forget. In conclusion, the finale of Creed does everything the finale for this kind of movie should do. It wraps up and pays off the movie's character arcs and themes in an extremely emotionally satisfying way, and delivers an exciting and technically brilliant action sequence. What more could you ask for? So, those are my thoughts on Creed's big finale. What do you think of this finale, and this movie on the whole? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, check out this podcast I do with a friend of mine where we talk about movies, called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.